Hey, everybody. This is Olga with People of Substance by LemonSkies. And I'm so excited to introduce my guest today, Rachael Ortiz-Marsh. Rachel, I'll give her a chance to introduce herself in a second, but we actually work together briefly, and she's a co-owner of Tennessee Trojans, which is a women's tackle football team in Tennessee. And I've been fortunate enough to get to know her and her co-founder and her partner, Tessa Ortiz-Marsh. So I'm just thrilled to talk football, to talk about being a founder. I have so many questions for you, and just thrilled to see you.
It's pretty been an unbelievable wild ride since we first met, Olga. So I'm pretty excited to delve into all your questions today.
So we met about a year ago, and it was around Christmas time, and I found myself on the Zoom call, very similar to what we're doing now, with these two wonderful women who are like, "We're starting a football team," and I was asking you a question, like, when you say football, like, what do you mean? And you're like, well, like tackle football. So I'd love to just hear about, how did you come to this place? Did you just wake up one day and said, I'm gonna start the football team?
No. Absolutely not. Actually, if I rewound probably to when I was smaller, if somebody said, "Hey, in 2022, really, the thought happened in 2021, said you're going to found a football team," I'd be like, "No way, right? I'm probably just going to be." I didn't even think I'd be in the army, so there's that. But it was kind of a revelation through a number of years. Really, see, I say seasons because football, the way it runs in sports, they're seasonal, right? So when you say year, it kind of, I feel like it locks it into like January to December. Football is it's a year-round thing. But I discovered women's football, tackle football specifically, in 2017. When saw watching my partner play. Funny story about that. I tell people, they kind of think I'm mean sometimes because she was home from law school and just graduated, taking the bar. So, she was just staying busy at home, and I'd come home every day. And one day I was just like, "Hey," I was like, "You really need to find a hobby. You're kind of driving me crazy because you're anxious about bar results. You're looking for, employment, and, you just need basically an outlet." And that was probably the best thing I could have ever said. It depends on who I'm talking to. They're like, "Oh, that was really mean of you." I'm like, "No, I was like, it's really the best thing that ever happened to us in general because it introduced us to a whole new world that I didn't even know existed, to be honest with you." Um, Growing up, it was just traditional sports, basketball, volleyball, track. And my school, very small, we didn't even have softball or soccer. So this world was like, boom, eye opening. So 2017, she joined the team. I watched her play in 2018, and then kind of progressed from 2018 to 2021, where it was like fan to general manager to co-owner, and then deciding to leave the team, not necessarily due to the team itself per se. It was more so I just didn't feel like the league was the right fit for me, and that's okay. It happens sometimes. It's just not the right environment or right, and like I said, fit. And so I wanted to be somewhere where I felt like these are my people, same mentality, same goals, same thought processes as far as like, I see it, I'm going to go get it. And that's what I love about where we're at now. So it was just basically a revolution. And throughout that time, a lot of the players on the team that I was on would ask us, when are you guys going to start your own team? When are you going to start your own team? And 3 years ago, the consistent answer was like, we're not going to start our own team. We're not doing it. But things changed. I retired, have more time for sure to delve into it. And then, being in it as a co-owner and being exposed to certain things as far as the intricacies of how the league that we were in operated, I, I wanted to make change possible. And honestly, what came out of that was I knew that the only way to change the landscape of women's football here where we're at in Tennessee was to move and go to a different league. And that meant starting your own team. And here we are, you know.
So one question, actually, I don't think I ever got a chance to ask you. How did you come up with the name? So Tennessee Trojans is a part of Women's National Football Conference. And, when we say tackle football, like we mean full on tackle. Like this is full contact sport. It's full padding. I'm getting very familiar with tackle football around my house, but with my 12-year-old. But, we're talking full on contact sport. But how did you come up with the name?
So actually, the name wasn't, haphazardly thrown out there. It has nothing to do with the Titans, with a T, anything like that. Um, when we started doing our research as far as how can we tie our football team to Tennessee, and as you see the logo, we have the 3 stars. That's anyone from Tennessee recognizes the 3 stars as the state of Tennessee because it's on our state flag. But Nashville, what we found out, is known as the Athens of the South.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no idea why it was called that, right? Like, we knew that there's literally a replica of the Parthenon with a huge statue of Athena in it. Very cool, very awesome. We went and visited it, but as we delved into it, what we found out is the reason it's called that is due to the educational institutions that are in the area. So, philosophy, education, all ties into one of my favorite things, which is Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. 2 favorite books are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Odyssey being number 1, and the Iliad being number 2. And obviously the Trojan War is very much a huge part of those books and just Greek mythology in general. Because, when it comes down to it, we really don't know if it existed or didn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes such a fantastic story, right? So there's the kind of the Greek side of it, the Greek side of things. But for us, both being military, it is the strategic play that the Greeks made with the Trojan horse. According to literature, what would happen is once you won the war, the losing side gifted you something. And what happened there was the Greeks gifted the Trojan horse. They sail away, make everyone believe that, hey, they really threw their hands up and they gave up. They're throwing in the white towel, right? Here's our gift. And so they roll in, the Trojan horse, and unbeknownst to them, you have the Greek soldiers that are in there, and we all know the story, right? It turns the tide and the Greeks win the war. They come back and they defeat everyone. So great strategic military move on that part. So marrying those 2 things together is how we came up with, the Tennessee Trojans. We believe that, I believe in the state of Tennessee, we have, in surrounding states, we have a giant well of athletic women that exist here. There hasn't been one team that has kind of taken on the challenge of drawing all of those wonderful, athletic women into one environment to work together. And so we're kind of seeing, that's the other part of the Trojan horse thing, is we're kind of seeing as the unknown, the dark horse figure comes to mind. You're mysterious. We don't know what Tennessee is going to bring to the Women's National Football Conference. And that's for everyone outside of our current environment. We know we're going to bring a competitive team. We're going to build it the way we feel it should be built, as far as organizationally, environment wise. The culture is definitely one of the hardest things to change in any organization. That's also part of building our own team, is being able to create the environment and culture that we want our organization to embody. So that's kind of how we came up with that. It wasn't in the middle of the night thing. It melds our background militarily along with our current place, our home. And so it seemed to work very well. And here we are, Tennessee Trojans.
So you and I were chatting that you're sort of what's next for the team is trying out players. So by the way, it's October 1st, you told me. So if you're in Tennessee and would like to try out, then if I was younger and less fragile, I probably would. But the tryouts are happening, and there's probably a lot of perceptions and misperceptions. Who is who is a player? Like who is the type of person that tries out for tackle football?
Well, number one is athleticism plays into it. So having a sports background, you don't have to have a background in football in order to come play football. Most of the individuals that come try out for football have honestly either played football in their backyard, football with their family. Very few have played football for a team, middle school, high school. I think that's a little bit more prevalent in today's world. But as far as the women that are joining now, you're looking at 30, anywhere from like mid 20s to, upper 30s, quite a big range. Very few 18 to 24 age group there. But even so, most of the individuals that come out have an athletic background rooted in some type of competitive sport. Anything from track to soccer, rugby.
Mm-hmm.
We love rugby players. They definitely have tackling form down to a T. But really, it's for anyone. Even if you don't know how to play football, we will teach you how to play football. That's what our coaching staff will be absolutely dedicated to doing to get you ready to play competitive football at a high level by April.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super exciting. So I can't wait to hear as you're trying people out and, kind of what the turnout looks like. But that's super exciting. And you and I have talked over the month that we've known each other. We've talked a lot about sports and what it does for women. Can you talk about that? I hear a little munchkin in the background.
Oh, yes. They'll be back there every once in a while. Yeah, I mean, where do we start with women in sports? Absolutely confidence, resiliency, uh, teamwork, ethics, as far as working together, not alone. That plays into success later on down the road when you run it as a woman running into adversity in all types of austere environments. We unfortunately as women seem to have an uphill climb sometimes in the corporate world specifically, really in almost any environment unless it is created by women. So having that ability to be confident, to be your genuine self, your authentic self, be okay with this is who I am, and stick to it, not give into that peer pressure, and resiliency for sure, because as we're going to be told, and we are told a lot of times, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't the right fit, or maybe you don't look the right way, or, you don't fit the traditional mold of what society deems as a woman, right? Which is what I love about football. Football is a world where it doesn't matter what size, shape, you know, uh, muscles, no, it doesn't matter. If you're able to learn the game from a mental aspect and then apply that, you're going to be successful. But I think that for me, specifically sports, and for a lot of women, it just gives you the ability to basically tackle no pun intended, but to tackle the world in general when you go out, whether it's school, work, and then just your personal life, because you're going to have those ups and downs.
And you've talked about Army veterans that find a place to belong on the playing
Absolutely.
field in civilian life.
Absolutely. I love it.
So you kind of, what I love about your story, you represent a lot of firsts. The Tennessee Trojans is the first professional women's football team in your state. And you as an owner represent a lot of firsts. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about yourself and your background, and kind of you just really kind of embody breaking barriers and just really showing up and saying, well, why not me?
Yeah. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. So we're the first WNFC team
Okay.
in the state. So there are several other women's tackle football teams. And I don't want to take away from them,
Sure.
but first women's National Football Conference team. But for me, again, rewinding time to when probably 6 years old, or probably 5 to 6 years old, my first memories of being little, right? Um, I grew up in a very austere environment as far as financial means. So very, for lack of better terms, I was poor. I was poor. My grandmother who raised me didn't speak English. She didn't write and she didn't read. And so there I was, being raised by my grandmother due to other issues that were going on with my mother at the time. So no mother figure, no father figure, second generation Mexican American. Fun fact is I spoke Spanish before I spoke English. No one would know today, but once I get, around my lovely family, that Spanish just comes out like no other, right? But the challenges there for me compared to where I am today, very small town. The focus was those kids that had the means to go on and do better, right? Those kids that they believe were going to be successful in life, whatever success is. And at that time, it was go to college, find a great job that pays you well, and be happy for the rest of your life, right? For me, it was like, oh, here's this brown kid, who is kind of smart, not kind of smart. I graduated with honors, I was a National Honor Society. I saw sports and education as a way to level the playing field for me. Those were my two outs, right? As far as from what I could see, it was where I could delineate myself from all those other outside influences. Because if I earned an A+, it was just as great as the rich or middle class kid sitting next to me that earned the A+, right? So it was a great safe space for me. But sports is really where I thrived, because even if I wasn't the best point guard, or I used basketball a lot, track, there was something that I was great at in that environment, right? And so growing up, not having much, I'll tell you this crazy story. People think I'm crazy, right? In a fun way. But my grandmother, we were so my grandmother, we were so poor that every day, one I grew up on, and I'm not afraid to talk about these topics today, because I think it's very important for young, kids that are currently living in this type of environment that I grew up in, that maybe get shamed for it, right? My grandmother, the only way she could support us was we were on food stamps, back, I'm a little bit older, so it's the little books with the bills in it, different colors. And then what some people might think of when it comes to specifically Latino individuals is agricultural work. I grew up in West Texas. So what did that mean? During the summers, I would earn money, $6 an hour, right? Literally pulling weeds out in between cotton fields. I didn't pick cotton, though, but I, would go out there with literally a hoe, food and water for the day, and work from the time the sun came up, to the time the sun went down. And at the end of the week, a farmer would come out and he'd be like, okay, how many hours you guys work times 6? And here's your weekly pay, right? There were no taxes involved, right? And so that's how I earned money to pay for school supplies, for clothes, help my grandmother. But every day she'd get up, she would give me 4 quarters. They'd be sitting on her nightstand. And that's what I would take with me to school. And, I was on free lunches, the free lunch program. But being in high school specifically, it didn't exclude the bullying. It didn't exclude the, oh, look, there's, everyone knew who, especially in a very small town, like I said, who had money, who didn't have money, who was kind of in the middle, right? So I would save up my $1.25 essentially all week. And I would, at the end of the week, my celebration was, let me go to what we referred to as the snack bar line. That's where, you paid for snacks, as far as, burgers, hot dogs, the cool stuff, not the regular free lunch stuff, And so, I think about growing up in that environment, and sports and education definitely helped me like thrive in a different way. Because when it came down to it, no matter what anyone said, they couldn't argue with my hard work or my dedication in the classroom. They couldn't argue with how hard I worked, on the court, or the fact that, I contributed immensely to my track and field team when it came to our relay events,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so it was really one of those, like I said, leveling, leveling the playing field literally for me. And then that transition to obviously my military career, where women face, all kinds of insurmountable pressures, along with, mountains, so to speak, to climb when it comes to very specific topics in the military. And those things still exist today. I mean, we still have a bunch of firsts going on in that regard. But, it's to say where I am today is where I would envision myself to have been middle school, high school, probably not. Um, but my grandmother was also a very influential force, although she didn't speak English. And, watching her love her children, how she loved me unconditionally, and recognizing that although we didn't have much, anything that she had, she gave.
Mhm.
And then she helped everyone around her. As much as she didn't have, she always had something, whether that was feeding someone, whether that was just being that person that they came to for help in regard to prayer. And then there's watching her persevere through the difficult times in our life that involve loss, family loss or tragedy, and then just dealing with health issues in general.
Mhm.
And all of that really to say, I don't think I would have been as successful as I was in the military without having to have faced some adversity and challenges in my younger life. And sports was no different. I was not, I wasn't always the fastest kid. I wasn't always the best shooter on the basketball team. I wasn't a starter. But let me tell you, Olga, defense was my calling key. I was tenacious. I was, very dedicated to ensuring that you weren't going to score on me.
Mhm.
And so, being leadership started there because everyone recognized the fact that, I kind of walked around with a chip on my shoulder. I felt like I should be in that starting five, but I also wasn't one of the favorites. And so I would get my playing time, but I would definitely shine on defense. And a lot of the other individuals that kind of might felt the same way started gravitating towards me, right? And it's just like, hey, what are we going to do today? And it was interesting. You hear that phrase, iron sharpens iron, right? Well, let
Mhm.
me tell you, two-a-days in basketball, the A team, as we called ourselves, and the B team, we would definitely go at it. I don't think we would have been as great of as a basketball team if we wouldn't have competed against each other. But we made each other better, but we were all still friends at the end, which is hard, let me tell you, for a group of teenage girls to do.
Right. Well, I mean, I found sports later in life, but I really, I just think about how much it gives you from discipline to sort of how you deal with adversity. And it also gives you, to your point, it gives you acceptance, right? Like it's about
Absolutely.
peers that go through the same, when we go on a 12-mile run, it's not easy. So you kind of go through the hard times together, and that builds a really, really strong bond. So I just appreciate everything you're saying. Um, so I'm gonna, for a little bit of a fun thing to wrap this up. I've been doing this game of two truth and a lie, and you know, just the whole tackle football, like that seems to be like it would be a winning chip in the game of two truth and a lie, but obviously you can't use that. So two truth and a
Very
lie.
obvious.
You're gonna tell us two things that are true and one that is completely made up, and I'm gonna try to guess which one is made up. And I've gotten to know you, but I think there's a lot I don't know, and every time I have conversations with you, I learn more and more and more. There's just a lot of layers there, so I'm excited, but I'm ready. Like I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you three things about myself.
Yes.
Number one is I love to play video games.
Okay.
So video games. I'm undefeated at bananagrams, and I'm an avid plant grower.
So I'm gonna, by process of elimination, I feel like gaming, I can totally see you do that. And you've got a
Okay.
son, so I'm gonna say gaming is true. Bananagram, that's like very specific. I'm gonna say that plants is a lie. Like you kill plants, don't
That's no, I don't.
you?
You
I
know,
do.
Olga, I don't kill plants. I think it has to do with. You're right, by the way. And I am undefeated in bananagrams.
Mhm.
um, and that eats Tessa up because she's very competitive, like myself. But
I can see that.
I I love plants. My grandmother actually had a plethora of plants, like so many that during the winter, some of them ended up in my room because they needed to come indoors and be inside for the winter. But I think part of it is growing up having to be out in the field literally
Mhm.
all day long. It might sound a little bougie, right? But I don't I don't connect with the plants as well as other people do.
Yeah.
I will keep them alive. I'm very good at. I'm actually have a very green thumb.
Okay.
Um, I do, but I don't enjoy growing them
That's
as
fair.
much as maybe I should. I
Yeah.
like them though. I do like them. But now that we have twins, I worry about them just like grabbing them and chomping them in their mouth. So
Sure. Sure. No, that
even
can.
more of a reason.
Yeah, I can't grow a plant. The only thing I can grow, which is kind of a specific thing, is marigolds. That's like the only thing I've ever taken
Oh
in.
yeah, those are beautiful though.
Yeah, and I've ordered these like heirloom bougie marigolds that are white and they smell nice. So that's the only thing I can grow. But otherwise, I'm a plant killer for sure. So cool. Well, thank you, Rachel, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it's always wonderful to see you. And please say hi to Tessa, and
Oh,
we'll
I will.
definitely do this
Absolutely.
again. I can't wait to see in October, kind of as the team is taking shape. So it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think you're on our Instagram, right? So at Tennessee Trojans,
Hmm.
and then our webpage. I saw that you subscribed, so whoever's watching this, go on there and subscribe.
I'm going to put
Take
a
a
link
look at it.
in the comments so
Okay.
people know where to subscribe,
Yeah,
especially Tennessee residents, because they can come and watch.
absolutely. Absolutely. They're open. You can come hang out.
Exactly. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
coming.